Welcome to the Resilience Unlimited Show, your go-to podcast for empowerment and growth. I'm Coach Dr. Lauren, founder of Resilience Unlimited, inviting you to join our transformative journey each week. This space is specially crafted for high-achieving women, specifically women of color, where we can feel seen, heard, and part of a thriving community. This podcast is your compass for emotional regulation, understanding your purpose, and living unapologetically authentic. Ready to invest in yourself? Welcome to episode 11, The Resilient Mother, on the Resilience Unlimited show. So those of you who are new, welcome to the show. You heard the intro, you know who I am. Maybe you're giving this a little test drive to see if this is something that piques your interest. And if you are, I hope you stay until the end of the episode. And if there are other episodes here that resonate with you, please be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're listening to this, be sure to subscribe wherever you get podcasts. Those of you who are back for more, welcome back. And as you know, I talk about ways that we as women of color, high achieving women of color, can really find ways to be resilient. I also find that most of my clients and people that listen to the show are also mothers. So this one, episode 11, is called The Resilient Mother. Now, I'm going to, as you know, the structure is opening question, tell you how this relates to me, and then I'm going to give you some practical tips. And again, those of you who are new, you know that, well, actually you don't know, but let me explain. I am straight to the point, direct. I like to just get that information out there. I myself struggle with people kind of beating around the bush and not really getting straight to the punch. And I think a lot of it is my ADHD of like, can we just like, what am I supposed to do? So knowing that some of my audience resonates with that and their brain might be working the same way as mine, I just like to go boom, boom, boom. So let's kick it off with our opening question. Now, this is if you're a mom. If you're not a mom, then sorry, turn it off. Because this is really, I'm talking to my moms out here. Are you raising your kids to be dependent or independent and resilient? Now, I ask that because, and I'm again speaking from my experience being a Black mom. In our society, Black women are supposed to be the strong ones. We're supposed to take on everything. We're supposed to be the caregivers of our kids, of our spouses, of our parents, of our family members. And it's a lot of burden. It's a lot that we take on. And if you look historically, at least at American history, we can go back to slavery where Black women were taking care of these white babies. And it's like we are just machines. We just have to keep doing. We have to keep, putting on a good face, showing up every day. It doesn't matter how we feel. It doesn't matter how we're tired, how exhausted we are. And I think as a society, this has been passed down generations and generations and generations where we are just doing. We're not stopping and saying, maybe I should rest my body. Maybe I should, check my feelings because maybe this is causing a disease, or as some say, a dis-ease. And we tend to have high blood pressure, might be overweight, all these unhealthy things because we take on so much. And I have lived in that space for a bit. And honestly, after seeing some of my own family members pass away, whittle down, not be the strong Black woman I thought they were, or I used to see when I was younger, it's like life has really taken a beating. And actually, it's so funny. There's this one Tyler Perry movie. Which one is it? I can't remember which movie it is, but there's a scene where I think it's Kiki. I forgot her last name, but you know who I'm talking about. Kiki is in the kitchen like a teenager, like basically rocking her baby brother, baby sister to sleep. And Medea comes in and she's like, when am I going to get my turn to be a kid? And it was just kind of like, wow, she's taking care of her little sibling and she's like 14 or 15 years old. And that's crazy. And then there was another scene, I think, in this movie where someone said to Medea, what happened to her? And she said, life. And that just summed it up. It summed it up. And so I think we need to stop and we really need to ask ourselves some critical questions. And we need to equip ourselves as high achieving women of color, because this isn't just in the Black community, it's in other communities that are outside of the white community, where it's like we are supposed to be doing all of these things, but what about us? So I remember back in like 2018 when I was working full time as a special educator. I just got married 2 years prior. I became a mom to my older daughter, whom I've stated before, she's not my biological daughter, but she's, definitely mine. And I raised her as mine. But there was so much going on at that time in my life that I look back now and I'm like, I was on the path to burnout. I was on the path to people being dependent upon me and then me being extremely resentful. So I was working all day. I would come home, um, have this baby to tend to, still breastfeeding. And my husband is vegan. My older daughter at the time was going through some eating issues. So her meals had to be curated. Um, and I was pescatarian, and then I had this little baby. So I legit was making like 4 meals a day. I mean, it was insane. I'm like trying to make sure the teenager has what she needs because she needs the nutrients to make sure that she's fueling her body enough. I have to make this for my vegan, picky eating husband so he has something to eat. And then I wasn't eating meat aside from seafood. So there were all these different things and balls in the air. And then at one point, I was trying to make pureed homemade meals for my youngest daughter. And I'm like, this is insane. And on top of it, I was working on my dissertation. I was working on my doctorate degree. And, in retrospect, I think that really is the hallmark sign of a very focused but burnt out mom who is just like, I just got to make it through. Just got to make it through. I don't really recall moments of, ah, yeah, I'm feeling good in my life, or like, yeah, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. I was not present. I was really stressed. And, I think it really boiled down to I created an atmosphere where everybody had to depend on me. And then it's like the cycle of you're stressed because you're like, why can't you do this? Why can't you do that? Well, if you are enabling people to not allow them to productively struggle, or if you're enabling your spouse or your kids to not really go through the feelings and figure it out on their own, and you just come in and swoop in and save the day because sometimes we say, well, I can just do it faster. Well, I can just do it quicker. I can just do it better. Let me just do it. Well, that's raising and allowing people to just depend on you all the time. And that's where I really was in that time in my life. And it took me a long time to not be so resentful and angry and to just put up some personal boundaries. Because listen, here's the thing. My oldest daughter now is 20. And sometimes I look and I'm like, wow, she like really doesn't need me for much. And what she needs me for is more of life lessons, more of like, hey, should I do this versus that? Not the daily, what's for dinner? Not the daily, hey, can I have some money for this? And a lot of it is because my husband and I are teaching her how to be an adult. She has a job when she's home for holiday breaks. We hold her accountable to buy groceries because that's what you do in the real world. You don't just say, oh, this is just magically supposed to happen. She has pets that she's responsible for. When she is away at school, she sends us money to buy food. When she's at home, she takes full responsibility for her animals because they're hers. And so I look at all the things that we are putting in place for her, and I'm like, you know what? She's independent and she's resilient, and she can do this because we are setting up the atmosphere for her to take risks, for her to feel responsible, because that's really the big thing. You want to feel responsible for your actions and feel good about it. And you're not always going to have good days, but if you're resilient enough to bounce back and say, you know what, I got this, then you don't need to fall back on mom, And I think some moms really look at it like, oh, but my baby's growing up. Well, that's the whole point. We bring them into this world to give them the core values, the skills, the integrity, the ethics, the morals, all of those things. And it's their job to then figure it out on their own journey. And so looking at her, I'm really proud. I'm like, wow, this is what it can look like. And this is what it can feel like. And so now with my youngest, we are really trying to set her up for success. Now, I want to go through 6 ways that you can either A, check to see if you are being a resilient mother, because really, here's the thing. And I'm speaking to you. Now, there are some women who are like, this is my calling in life, to be a mom, to be a stay-at-home mom, to care for the home. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with it at all. For the longest time, I was like, that's not the path for me. And I kind of judged it. But being home, working from home, building my own schedule, my flexibility, I realized I do stay-at-home mom stuff, and it's exhausting. The amount of laundry and meal prepping, I'm like, oh my God, I have a lot of respect. My grandmother was a stay-at-home mom. She got her doctorate and all that, but she really just wanted to be a mom. She had 4 kids and she loved it. That's not for me. And I'm assuming you are not that way either. You want to have a purpose, whether it's climbing the corporate ladder, whether it's building a business, whether it's building a legacy that you can really put your head on the pillow at night and say, yes, I built this. We create children, but we can also create businesses. We can also create ideas and turn them into our dreams. So when I just want to clarify that and say, you're here listening to this because you resonate with what I'm saying. Now, if you're offended and you're a stay-at-home mom and you're like, fuck this bitch, she doesn't know what I'm talking about, well, then just stop listening. Just stop listening. Okay, so let's get back to these tips. So the first one is to lead by example. Okay, we don't want to do that whole I'm pretty sure every Black person heard this in their house. Do as I say, not as I do. What kind of shit is that? So you're telling me to eat healthy, but then you're eating McDonald's every damn day. No, our kids look at our actions. I say this to my 6-year-old all the time when she makes a mistake or whatever, and she tells me sorry. I'm like, I don't, I appreciate your apology, but mommy's about action. You need to change the behavior. I don't want to hear sorry and then you do the same thing tomorrow. I want a different behavior. So if we're leading by example, you can demonstrate your resilience. You can share your challenges and setbacks. You can talk about how you overcame them. So a good example is my oldest daughter, she bought her first major purchase, which was retainers, because she had Invisalign for years and she wants to make sure her teeth still stay straight. And that $300 plop on her debit card was a huge expense for her. And because mommy and daddy didn't buy it, she bought it. She took pride in making sure, she had the right cleaning materials, making sure that she had it in her retainer box and all of this. Well, when she came home, her routine was different from college. So you know what happened? She somehow lost it, or the dog ate it, and she was devastated. And, I let her be in her feelings, and I said, hey, you know what? These things happen. And she was more upset at the fact that she lost $300, and I'm like, that's a big, big deal. We've been there before. So instead of me just kind of sitting there solving the problem for her, paying for it for her, she had to really go through it. And sometimes it's hard for us to see our kids struggle, but that's life, right? We want to equip them for life. So I actually decided to say, you know what? There's no shame in the game. I'm going to share my setbacks. So I told her, I said, listen, that's a $300 mistake, but you're going to learn from that. I said, listen, I invested in coaching in someone who didn't give a shit about me or my business or my purpose. And that was a $6,500 mistake. And she just kind of looked at me and I said, yeah, it was a bad mistake. But I said, but I'm still here. So, I was able to share that with her, and she was able to conceptualize it because she's 20 and she was like, wow, that's a lot of money. That would clear out her whole bank account. So we want to lead by example. The second tip is to encourage problem solving. So this is something that when I was teaching in public school, especially in math, we would always tell our students that they should practice math practice. I can't remember whatever it was, but it was to productively struggle. Now, it's a sweet spot. You don't want to have something so ridiculously complex that your kid shuts down and they're frustrated. But you also don't want to have something where you just save the day and they never persevere. We want that productive struggling. So I'm going to take my little one when she's really having a hard time with something, and I'm setting her up for success. I want her to be independent and resilient. So I say, hey, we're in the Problem Solvers Club. So let's kind of brainstorm some ways that we can really unpack what the problem is and how we can solve it. And more than often, because we're teaching her these skills, she's able to check herself. As a matter of fact, last night I was sitting in the kitchen with her and I was trying to upload some files in a client portal, and I don't know what Apple did, but I was so irritated because I wanted to slide stuff on my desktop and it was just making it like 5 steps harder than it needed to be. And I was really irritated. So I was just like grumbling under my voice. I was like, oh, Apple, I hate Apple. She's sitting next to me doing her IXL homework and she said, Mommy, you really need to take a deep breath. And then she said, we don't say hate. That is not a good word to say. I said, you know what, sweetie, you're right. You're right. I said, Mommy's just very frustrated right now because I'm trying to do this efficiently and it's not being efficient at all. And she's like, maybe you should take a step back. So I'm sitting here getting advice from my 6-year-old because these are things that we are teaching her, especially as a young Black girl. We want her to be able to problem solve through things. The third tip is teach emotional intelligence. This is a big, big thing that we, as I feel as a culture, I can't speak for other cultures of color, but I know in the Black community, we just don't talk about our feelings. We just stuff it down. We just keep it moving. We keep it pushing. It's not healthy at all. Because when we do that, we continue to just stay busy, but we're not checking ourselves to say, are we keeping ourselves busy because we don't want to feel what we're feeling? Your feelings are just that. They're feelings. You don't have to own them. You don't have to invest in them. You don't have to make it bigger than whatever it is. All you need to do is be a scientist, a feeling scientist. So you note, I'm frustrated. What's making me frustrated? I can't slide these documents on my desktop. Is this a problem that's going to impact the rest of my day? No. Well, what can I do to solve this problem? Take a deep breath. I mean, these are things we want to teach our kids emotional intelligence, because the bottom line is, especially with our Black kids, our brown and Black kids, life is going to be much harder than their counterparts. And so we have to build that resilience, but not the resilience of, okay, well, everybody's racist and I'm just going to have a chip on my shoulder. No, we want them to be able to understand, how are we feeling in that moment? And how can we really address this in a way where we can rise up and be resilient and independent? And I highly recommend this app. It's free. It's called How We Feel. It is based on a Yale study, and they made it accessible because it's this whole movement of therapists and psychologists that really want people to understand how they're feeling so they can really unpack and dispel all those cognitive distortions. And that's huge. I also recommend a book by Brene Brown, which I just finished, called The Atlas of the Heart. And it's all about emotion. She has like years and years and years of research about emotions, and, and it actually taught me things where I'm like, oh, I didn't even know this was a family of this emotion. So when we teach our kids these things, it really allows them to think more critically, to engage in problem solving, and to be resilient. I know my 6-year-old, her morning routine, I have her do mindfulness, check her emotions, and practice gratitude. And that is going to, I know, prolong her health, her problem solving, and her social skills the older she gets. The fourth tip I highly recommend is to set realistic expectations. More than often, we will set these expectations that are unbelievable. I mean, I still do this and I have to check myself. Like, why am I write a report, record 5 videos today, edit 5 videos, see 15 clients? I mean, it's just unrealistic. I'm setting myself up for failure. And so we want to make sure that we are having that healthy balance of success and failure. We want to make sure that we are promoting and telling our kids too. And I know this is big in most Asian cultures, and I can say this because of friends and colleagues I've worked with, and where I live, there's a huge Korean and African and Indian population, but there's no such thing as failure. You can't fail. It's always A's. And it's just like, that's ridiculous, because honestly, the more you fail, the more you realize that's not the direction I should be going in. So what can I do to change that? And that really is a true entrepreneurial mindset. The more times you fail, the better you get up and you're resilient to know that that didn't work. So we want to set realistic expectations, and we want to do that for ourselves as well. We need to be able to carve out me time. We need to be able to carve out girl time. We need to be able to carve out don't talk to me, I'm meditating, doing breath work time. Whatever it is, it has to be a realistic expectation for both parties. The fifth tip is to promote the independence. This is hard for some parents, and believe me, I get it. And I don't know if it was my upbringing. I don't know if it was how I was raised, and a combination of me being a tough love educator slash parent. I don't have a hard time with allowing independence. Now, there are some things where I do still say, like in the mornings with my youngest daughter, she has to make her bed, brush her teeth, get herself dressed. Depending on what's going on, I might be like, okay, let mommy help you with that. And sometimes it's purely a time blocking situation, but I do have to take a step back and say she's got to be able to do this on her own. So let me give her the tools to be successful. Let me give her a clock so she can see how much time she has left, because maybe she has some time blindness, or maybe she doesn't know what 15 minutes feel like. So we want to be able to promote that independence. She has house chores. She feeds the animals. She will, like I said, make her bed, sometimes help take out the trash. So there are things here where kids want that autonomy, but it's when we don't give them the tools to be successful for that autonomy, it blows up in our faces as parents by the time they get to that tween middle school age, because they just think they know everything. But if we're giving them these tips and tricks, along the way, they will be independent and resilient and know how to do it. The sixth tip is have a supportive environment. So you as a parent, you as mom, you have to be able to be open with your feelings. You have to be able to be open with your failures. You have to be able to open up and say, gosh, I really took a risk and that was just not the thing. Or, hey, I'm going to celebrate this win because mom got 5 new clients today. That's something I need to start doing. I don't celebrate myself nearly as much as I should. And that's not giving me a supportive environment. And that's also not me modeling a supportive environment for my kids. And it's a heavy, it's a healthy balance between being humble, but also just completely not acknowledging the work that you've done. So we want to be able to have that healthy, supportive environment for both us as moms, resilient moms, and also for developing our independent, resilient children. So those are 6 tips to help you become a resilient mother. I'm sure you are a resilient mother, but I just really wanted to bring this to the surface, because it's really hard being a Black mom, business owner, wife, daughter, sister. I mean, all of these hats that we wear. And, honestly, we have to get real with ourselves and say, we can't do it all. So we have to prioritize what is important. And that goes back to episode 7. You need to define your success. What is success for you? What are your core values? What are your strengths? And that's how we kind of merge all that together to become the best versions of ourselves. Now, this is the end of the episode. I do have my shout outs. So for my Black professional women with ADHD or signs and symptoms of ADHD, I highly recommend you purchasing the Serenity Suite. It's a $17 bundle. There are 2 assessments, an emotional regulation assessment. We need to see how dysregulated we are, because we may not realize just how dysregulated we are, because it's just not something we're checking in with ourselves to know our nervous system is on fire. I also have a digital detox, which is huge because we are now in 2024 and almost everything is virtual. So we can literally be living on our phones 24/7 and not realizing garbage in, garbage out. What are we putting in our brains, and how is it sticking or not sticking? And what's happening inside that impacts our nervous system? There's also a cognitive distortion mindset workbook where it goes through all the cognitive distortions, what they are. You can check yourself and say, oh my God, I do like 20 of these, even though they're 14. They're prompts, they're scenarios, they're all these things to kind of help you work through that. There's also an I am burnt out journal. So you can kind of assess, are you burnt out and how do you resiliently recover? And then there's also a life coaching workbook too that helps you really zero in on your core values, your goals, where you want to be, all that good stuff. So I created that with love because I've been there. I know what it feels like to not have a blueprint and to kind of just be like walking in the dark, like, what the fuck's going on? So again, $17 bundle Serenity Suite. The link is in the show notes. And if you're also interested in working with me in one-on-one coaching, be sure to click the discovery call coaching link. I'd love to chat with you. Even if, you're like, wow, I can't afford your services right now, or, I'm not sure if I can get down with coaching, but I like what you're saying. There's no judgment at all. Like, you come to me when you're ready. That's how I live my life. Everything is happening in perfect time. I'm not going to push you to do something you are not ready to do, because when you enter coaching and or therapy, you need to show up. You need to show up. And I don't mean physically. I mean, you need to do the work, and I will help you do the work, but you have to be ready to do the work. Now, if you're looking for some educational therapy where I can provide you with some ADHD coaching, for students, executive functioning, and or Orton Gillingham literacy interventions, please be sure to click the discovery call ed therapy link. And if you want to get on the podcast mailing list, the newsletter, all the links are below. So thanks for listening. If you continue to hear all my shout outs, if not, no worries there. It's there. I'll be doing it every single episode. All right. I want you all to stay resilient, and I will see you ladies next week. Thank you for joining us this week on the Resilience Unlimited show. Be sure to hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe on our YouTube channel and follow us on social media. See you next week, divas. And don't forget, stay resilient.